Consumption is the sole end and purpose of all production, and the interest of the producer ought to be attended to, only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. The maxim is so perfectly self-evident that it would be absurd to attempt to prove it. Producer? Consumer? What does any of this mean? Oh, hey there, future economists. It's Bea here. I know in other social studies courses we talked about Adam Smith and his contributions to economics, so I figured I should probably take a look at some of his writings. And I have to tell you, it was confusing. Turns out that economists have a pretty specific vocabulary they use. It also turns out that many of the terms used in economics are also terms we use in our everyday lives. Producers, consumers, goods, services. We use these terms all the time. But they have some pretty specific meanings in economics. In today's lesson, we're going to work on defining those terms so you can feel comfortable moving forward throughout this course. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer the following questions. How do the three economic questions drive economic decisions? What is the difference between a producer and consumer? What are the similarities and differences between a good and a service? You should also start thinking about our big picture question. How are the wants and needs of producers and consumers balanced against each other in an economy? Now, let's hold off on Adam Smith and take a few minutes to start learning how to talk like an economist. The three basic economic questions. Sounds pretty, basic, right? But what are those basic economic questions? Well, at all levels of production, from a chef starting a small local restaurant all the way to national economies, these questions need an answer. What to produce, how to produce it, and who to produce it for. Answering what to produce determines what we are going to make, harvest, or sell. How to produce it determines what processes, methods, and strategies we're going to use to make what we just decided to produce. And finally, who to produce it for helps us to figure out who our customers are going to be. Maybe that chef decided they're going to make awesome hamburgers using local ingredients and sell them out of a food truck downtown so that office workers have a tasty lunch option. See, those basic questions are answered. What is being produced? Hamburgers. How is it being produced? Using local ingredients and sold out of a food truck. Who is it being produced for? Office workers downtown. And for economists, it isn't just how these questions are answered that is important. They also want to know who is answering the questions in an economy. Is it private individuals or is it the government? Now, I don't want to give everything away, but when we start to study different economic systems, who answers the basic economic questions plays a big role in determining what type of economic system is operating in a place. All right, time to check in with the first guiding question. How do the three basic economic questions drive economic decisions? Once those basic questions have been answered, participants get divided into two categories. Want to guess what those categories are? If you said producers and consumers, give yourself a pat on the back. Producers are individuals or groups who provide a good or service designed to meet the wants or needs of consumers. In the case of our hamburger food truck, the chef is the producer. And there are producers throughout the economy. Big car company, they're a producer. Local bookstore, producer too. Your great Aunt June making scarves to sell at the local holiday market. She's a producer too. Have you ever been a producer? On the other hand, consumers are individuals or groups who buy a good or service to fulfill a want or a need. You know, those downtown office workers chowing down on some of those delicious burgers. You know who else are consumers? A young couple buying their first house. Consumer. A businessman buying a newspaper on his way into work. Yep, consumer. Me heading into the all-you-can-eat hot wing buffet. Definitely a consumer. When have you been a consumer? But it's important to remember that in an economy, people can be both producers and consumers. That chef, well, when they're making and selling those burgers, they're a producer. But when they're buying meat or meat substitutes to make those burgers with, the chef is a consumer. All right, time for your next guided viewing question. What is the difference between a producer and a consumer? Okay, now that we've answered the 3 basic economic questions and divided people into producers and consumers, it's time for our last set of definitions. Goods and services. Goods are physical or tangible things that people either want or need. That burger from the chef, it's a good. New car? That's a good. Video game system? Also a good. Back-end loader? Absolutely a good. Heart-healthy and nutritious leafy green vegetable? Might not be the most fun, but still technically a good. Services are non-physical or intangible tasks or actions designed to fulfill a need or want. Giving a haircut. Service. Babysitting the neighbor's kids. That's a service. Shoveling your neighbor's driveway. Service 2. Helping your parents work on the garden. Also a service. Where's that back-end loader? In our food truck scenario, if the burgers are a good, well then the chef cooking that burger for you is a service. I mean, it would be kind of weird if you ordered a burger and you got a raw patty and had to cook it yourself. That leads me to my last point. Producers can offer both a good and a service at the same time. The chef selling you a burger they cooked, an auto mechanic selling you the part you need for your car and installing it for you. Can you think of any other examples of a producer offering both a good and a service? And now our last guided viewing question. What are the similarities and differences between a good and a service? Okay, time to recap today's lesson. Economists have their own vocabulary, and understanding the precise definition of these terms is essential. First, we have the 3 basic economic questions. What to produce, how to produce it, and who to produce it for. How we answer those questions drives economic production. Then we have producers and consumers, the people who provide and use goods and services in an economy. And finally, we have goods and services, those tangible and intangible things that help consumers fulfill their wants and needs. In tomorrow's lesson, we are going to get into the details of production by looking at the different types of resources producers use and examining their impact. But until then, it's Bea here reminding you to keep investing in yourself one lesson at a time. See you next time.